Welcome to our latest Fireside Chat. I'm Chris Baker and your host for our Fireside Chat. Mark Shapiro is passionate about leadership and growing yourself and your business. Mark posts a lot about leadership on his Twitter account, and we suggest you follow that. But he is also a great leader in Major League Baseball, where his family has been part of the sporting environment for many, many years, and we'll talk about that. Please welcome President and CEO of the Toronto Blue Jays, Mark Shapiro.
It's good to be with you, and always happy to share and learn.
Yeah, thank you. And Mark, we're so thrilled to have you here because of your passion for leadership, especially. Obviously, you're with Canada's biggest and only baseball team, really, in the major leagues anyway, with the Toronto Blue Jays. And that's a task in itself to lead such a large organization. Obviously, the Toronto Blue Jays aren't just in Toronto. They're all across Canada. They're all across North America with their minor league systems and scouts and things like that. So leading in that type of environment is very similar to a sales world almost, because we're very, very numbers based, but we're also spread out. And I want to talk a little bit about your leadership style. Obviously, we'll talk a little bit about the current environment here too, because it's a little different to lead in this type of environment. But before we do, I wanted to talk a little bit about how you are in a family business. So your family is considered royalty in sport. So I'd love for you to just start by talking about your own history, your family history in sport, and your dad, who's a major agent, I know, and so if you could talk to us a little bit about that and the importance of legacy and what you do, and then we'll continue on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the more kind of relevant aspect of my family tie to my role and my job is just my passion for the game and my love of the game. My dad was the son of an immigrant and a guy who just loved the game of baseball growing up. Played at a lower level at university, and when he was in law school at Harvard, worked on the grounds crew for the Red Sox, and just always was around the game. As I grew up, my dad was just a fan. You know, we had season tickets to the Baltimore Oriole games, third base, just to watch Brooks Robinson play. And I was the kid hanging over the rail to get autographs, playing stickball, wiffle ball, with a taped up baseball, taking grounders in the street, and it was just a part of the fabric of my childhood and part of my bond with my dad. However, at about 12 or 13 years old, the owner of the Baltimore Orioles asked my dad to help Brooks Robinson out of bankruptcy because Brooks had signed a sponsorship deal with a sporting goods company that went out of business, and they went after his money. And my dad was a securities lawyer. He helped Brooks through that. And for those listeners that don't know, Brooks is a Hall of Famer, won 16 consecutive Golden Gloves, and kind of is a legend in Baltimore sports where I grew up. And so Brooks asked my dad to negotiate his last contract, which was an education for my dad. And at the end of that, Brooks said, "I wish you had been there 20 years ago." And they went into business together, representing baseball players. It was never my dad's sole business, but he did go on to represent guys like Cal Ripken Jr. and Kirby Puckett and Eddie Murray and Jim Palmer and a lot of Hall of Famers. He's out of the business now, but being that he was on the other side, on management, he represented labor. It's not like that was a direct tie. However, the passion for the game, the exposure to great players and the standards and expectations that they have for themselves and others, and the way they go about their business, that certainly ignited something inside of me and is still with me today.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And to hear that passion about sport, but also leadership is incredible. And that's kind of where we want to lead from that too. I mean, it's great that it's a family business for you, but the other part of family business, from the sounds of your dad's history and now yours, is leadership and focus on leadership. We've had a chance to follow you on Twitter for a while. We've seen your interviews, obviously, with Sportsnet and others. And your big talk is about the Blue Jays, and it's about Major League Baseball, but it's also about leadership and your passion for collaboration and leadership. Talk to us a little bit about your theories around that, and why you feel that a collaborative leadership approach is the most important, and how that's affected the Toronto Blue Jays.
Well, I'm not sure any of my theories are static, because the core belief I have is to be a lifelong learner, which means you're always humble, open, and learning, and the opportunity to get better and improve exists on a daily basis. So Nothing I have to say will be identical in 5, 6, 7, 8 years as it is right now, because I hope to have learned something new and gotten better. The one constant maybe that ties back to leadership is, which has been increasingly clear to me and maybe evolved from the young guy 25, 30 years ago getting into baseball, is that the model of hierarchical top-down leadership, the model that one person should make decisions because he or she is smarter, more thoughtful, more systematic, has a better system. I just think that's a fallacy. I think if you pool intellect, you pool experiences, you pool education, and you pool perspectives, and then view those in a very systematic way, that you've got a better chance to make better decisions more often. And when you don't make a good decision, a better chance to learn from that setback and get better the next time going forward. So, there are a lot of different reasons for my beliefs in empowerment, collaboration, collective leadership, but the underlying goal is just a driving desire to get to the best result, to get to the best decision, to get to the best answer. So it's not tied to any one thing.
That's really good insight, and I love the whole lifelong learning message, because that's what we're all about. Obviously, that's what this site is all about, is not just learning today or tomorrow, but continuing to learn, and as everything changes, and we just see right now that everything has changed, right? So,
Right.
lifelong learning, I think, is such an important part of leadership. How do
Yeah.
you how do you utilize your leadership style to get your team, especially so remotely, all on the same page when they could be sort of focusing on their own personal numbers more than working as a group?
Probably one of the biggest challenges in building teams in the modern climate is that, I think our society and our culture, along with the current system that kind of governs Major League Baseball, leads players and people in general to focus on their own brand and maybe their own earnings, and not collective success. And it takes playing for a while or being around a business for a while to understand that the greatest fulfillment and gratification comes from being part of something. And if you focus on that, the individual prosperity will just follow. So that's easier said from my chair at 53 years old than it is for a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old coming in. We still make an effort to talk about those things, to encourage those thoughts, to value and reward what it means to be a good teammate, to be part of something bigger than yourself. And we try to not just say that, but to demonstrate that in the players that we promote, and the players we give opportunities to, and the players we reward with longer term contracts. But I would say to you that the single easiest way to have that actually impact your business is in selection, is in hiring, is in who you surround yourself with. That too many people shortchange that process. Too many people rely on anecdotal, I just know how to pick people, and not enough people go through a rigorous, painstaking process when they hire or when they select.
That's a great point. I think it really is all about selection, and some of the things too that go along with that are personal numbers. It actually leads perfectly into the next question when we stay with the personal numbers, and that is, oftentimes when we're hiring, especially in this industry, we're looking at the numbers and we're seeing, each owner probably has their Vlad Jr. and their Bo Bichette, who naturally come by sales and results themselves very, very well and very, very easily. They have less motivation to maybe participate in the community, to do networking, to become leaders themselves. You guys, as the Blue Jays, have done a great job under your leadership to get guys like Bo and Vlad, who they could end up anywhere because of their results, right? And so, and they don't, in theory, have to do any of this stuff, but you've gotten them to be very fan-oriented, leaders in the clubhouse. How did you do that? Like, how did you guys approach that?
Yeah, it's really challenging, because not many of us, including myself, at 20 or 19 years old, were ready to think about bigger picture issues. At that point, we were just kind of looking to feel good and to be happy, and whatever came with that, and maybe not really thinking about the consequences of and the responsibilities of a role or what it means to be a star. So to some extent, it's not fair to have that expectation for those young men. On another level, we have a unique opportunity where we are building something that we want to be a sustainable champion for fans in Toronto and all across Canada. And for that to happen, we need to be better than objective expectations. We need to be exceptional in a lot of ways. And the only way we can be exceptional is if our players contribute more than just talent. Because if it's talent alone, we're going to be mediocre to good, and that's it. So I think openly talking about some of the objective talent business challenges that exist in defeating the largest market teams that are in our division, the Red Sox and Yankees, openly talking about the role that leadership, even when assumed in a very individual way, and then exposing them to people in other walks of life that maybe because of life and death in the case of the Army Rangers or the CSOR Special Forces in Canada, have welcomed us and welcomed our players and kind of taken them in and shown them that culture, leadership, environment, being a good teammate, those things are more than just important. They're essential if you want to accomplish great things. And I think in the end, just helping them understand that, our legacy will be defined by winning championships, not by individual results. Pick the right people and you don't have to worry about policing, and you don't have to worry about treating them like kids, and they're motivated. And if they're motivated on their own to be the best they can be, if they're motivated on their own to be the best version of themselves, and they're motivated on their own to be great, which we should identify when we select players, then our job is to just help provide the roadmap, to help provide the resources, and to connect the resources on a very individualized basis with where a player's opportunities are to grow, develop, learn, and improve. So challenging players to be accurate self-evaluators, partnering with them in their development, being holistic in that development, and being focused on perpetual improvement and learning would be the things that we do at a very high level.
Okay. And so would you have staff or team members that are kind of keeping in touch with them all off season long?
Oh, yeah, we're very systematic in the way we go about that. The resources that we apply mentally, physically, and fundamentally, and the people that are responsible for regular touch points with their players.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. Even right now, if broker owners are watching, and they've got a team of mortgage agents that's 10, 15, 20, some of them even bigger, to sort of designate those people who should be still reaching out to those agents and brokers, and just checking in, see how things are going, and make sure that they're still feeling good about the business. I mean, the last thing we want in all of this is to lose people from a business and because they couldn't make it or they couldn't figure out how to make it in this type of environment. I think your approach is great, to have a systematic approach to
in this type of environment. I think the things that I've kept kind of forefront have been transparency, regular connectivity, but also hope and optimism, because the reality is things will get better and we will play baseball, and baseball will play a role in the recovery and in the return to normalcy. And it always has historically, and it will again.
Absolutely. And if we stay on the distance for a second, the Blue Jays, for those that don't know, are kind of everywhere. It's, you think Toronto, but really you're in Bluefield, Dunedin, you're in New Hampshire and Buffalo and Lansing, Michigan. And I mean, the Toronto Blue Jays span a wide range of international scouts and things like that. So when we will have a lot of executives watching this from our brokerage houses, which would be like a Dominion lending type thing where they're across Canada under a banner. Talk a little bit about how you manage an organization to the same principles that span so widely. How do you keep that sort of that branding, and how do you keep that training the same?
Well, when we go through our hiring process, our values are at the forefront of our hiring process. So collaboration, learning, empowerment, achievement, and respect are always a very big part too. That process is not one that is just filling jobs, but a very rigorous cross-departmental process with multiple people involved and engaged. And so when that person joins, there are multiple people, not one person, that feel already invested in and accountable for the success of that person. And they were selected largely because they align with the values of the organization. And three, I think it's that, anything we accomplish here is going to be due to collective accountability and collective ownership. We're not waiting for one person to make a decision. We're not waiting for one person to tell someone what to do. We know that every single one of us is individually tasked with driving results, with driving improvement, and with making each other better. And the expectation is from the day someone joins the organization, they're there not to pay their dues. They're there to make us better from day one. And so I would say that underlying expectation, that universal understanding that the only way we can be successful is to do a really good job of bringing people in and expect them to make us better right away. And that's also going to make it a more fulfilling and meaningful place to work.
You and your general manager, Ross Atkins, came in at an interesting time for the Blue Jays because there were some winning years, but they were almost superficially winning in that, we all saw that time where, the team was great, but at the same time probably wasn't going to reach the World Series. You guys came in and you had a message, you had a way of doing things that sometimes wasn't received by the fan base as popularly as maybe you had hoped. But now you sit in a situation where that adversity was totally worth it, right? There's Vlad, Bo, you've got, a situation where the team is nearing competitive nature. All those goals you were hoping to reach that maybe people didn't understand at the time of adversity are starting to come to fruition. What would you say to a mortgage broker who's kind of seeing that right now, where their clients are frustrated with the way that they have to operate their business right now, but in the end, it's a means to the end and it's better for the client? How would you approach that with them?
Well, first, just a point of clarification. I think that those teams in 15 and 16, and obviously there was only 2 years. We were here for one of those 2 years. They were exceptional teams filled with incredibly talented players. The one clear reality of those teams was that it wasn't sustainable, just due to the age of the team and the position of the farm system. So that's the only underlying challenge that we had to face coming in. And then obviously everybody has their own set of beliefs and values that we felt were important to imprint that would lead to sustainability in the American League East. What I'd say to people that are dealing with uncertainty, that are dealing with adversity right now, is that there are productive thoughts and there are counterproductive thoughts and efforts and actions. And the very simple line as to productive or counterproductive and non-productive is just what you can control. So if you can reduce the day and be conscious and aware of the thoughts, fears, anxieties, doubts that enter in to your mindset and to your windshield that you can't control, for instance, what's going on, around us, what the Bank of Canada does, what rates do, you can't control those things, but you can control your energy, your effort, your attention, your opportunity to get better and improve and develop. There are a myriad of things, everything from your mental health and well-being to your relationships, to your system and process, that if you focus on every day, you'll get 1% better. And if you're getting 1% better every single day, you're going to be in a pretty good position as we get through the adversity to take advantage of the opportunities that present themselves.
That's a great answer, and I think it leads perfectly into our next question, which is really about lifelong learning. So earlier on in this interview, you basically talked about how in your leadership approach and learning about how to be the best leader you can be, you talked about lifelong learning. That's what we're all about. Our slogan's brokers helping brokers. We try to make sure industry's helping each other out. Talk about the importance of that as an organization. So you've talked about your own personal lifelong learning. Do you guys have an approach with employees of the stadium, players, people in the organization to encourage that lifelong learning?
Yeah, I think, we believe that the most scalable competitive advantage is a learning organization. And it's just, if every single person is humble, open, and thinking about learning, or just thinking about improvement, or thinking about just getting better, then, and we do that at every single level across the entire organization, regardless of role, then I think we become like that snowball that just that unstoppable force. And so, I always go back to the story of, if you walk around any building that's in the Blue Jays orbit, so whether it's in Dunedin, in a clubhouse somewhere, this office, our locker room here, the weight room here, you'll see "Get Better Every Day," just written. That just very simple. And that stems from our very first, couple months here. Ross Atkins, myself, John Gibbons, a variety of leaders who were already here and that we brought in, all got together for a 4 or 5 day retreat to clarify the values that aligned us and connected, identifying, developing players and building and acquiring and then building a major league team. And we ended up with a really fancy mission statement that any business would have been proud of, but nobody would have remembered within the Blue Jays organization. And I called Ross and asked him what he thought about it on my drive home one night. And he said, "I feel really good. It's a great mission statement, but I wish it could just be "Get Better Every Day." And I hung up the phone. I was like, it can be. That's the single, simplest, greatest, most universal mission I've ever heard. And so it applies to an intern, it applies to a trainer, a strength coach, someone selling tickets, someone working in, stadium operations and focused on engineering. Every single person in the organization, if we are all focused on getting better every day, whether we're a player or whether we're in the front office, if we're doing that universally, great things will follow those efforts. And that largely is symbolic of a learning culture.
That's amazing. Great answer. And thank you for that, because it is so true. I mean, it's incredible how important, and just the research, we're a fairly young company ourselves, and just the research we've been able to do in the last 2 years about lifelong learning just emphasizes its importance. And it's great to hear the Blue Jays are all about that too, and getting better every day. Second last question. This one's for you personally. This is your Bautista bat flip moment in leadership. So tell us, do you have a specific event or place and time where you could have walked out at 2401 Ontario Street in Cleveland or One Blue Jays Way, holding a bat in your hand and think, I'm going to flip that bat. That was an amazing day. And I'm glad this particular thing happened in my sort of leadership experience?
Yeah, probably two moments. One when we clinched the division in Cleveland in 2007, and then maybe more when we knocked the Yankees out of the playoffs in New York. I think I always tell people the greatest sound I've ever heard in sports has been silence in Yankee Stadium. So to beat the Yankees in their stadium, the behemoth Yankees as the little small market Cleveland Indians. But that was just a small piece of it. Then to watch those players celebrating, one, to know that they weren't just incredibly talented, but they were really good people, man, like authentically, genuinely good role models for kids, great teammates, CeCe Sabathia, Victor Martinez, Grady Sizemore, Casey Blake, Travis Hafner. I mean, just an incredible group of guys that, were easy to pull for and believe in and represented everything we had been trying to do. And then two, it was not hard for me to think and reflect on the path that it took to get there. Every scout that identified one of those players, every player development person that helped them be the best they can be, every trainer, physiotherapist that kept them on the field, every front office executive and intern and analyst that helped devise the game plans that helped their talent play out. Just the collective effort behind the players' success. I saw those players, but I saw each, one of 500 people behind those players that helped us get to that moment. So that moment was an affirmation in a set of values and an affirmation in a process.
I think that's a great message that you just gave about, individual success doesn't come from the individual; it comes from the army that supports them. And I think that was that's a fantastic message. And as we finish up here, one last thought. Just staying motivated and operating a business in this type of environment. If you had one thing to say to the brokers watching this right now, what would you say in this sort of adverse environment, about staying motivated and operating a business that's, obviously around numbers for the most part?
Well, I would say rely, that if you're successful in business, successful in sport, or successful in life, there's some competitive desire within you. and within every adversity and challenge and setback, that there's an opportunity to grow, develop, learn, and improve. And a lot of success in life is predicated upon having the mindset that challenges are actually opportunities, and careers and lives are built on the scars of our setbacks and challenges. So it's a little bit just to tweak your mindset and to ensure that you're not feeling sorry for yourself, ensure that you're not wallowing in things that are overwhelming that you cannot control. Get back to finding the things that you can control, commit to improving, and commit to finding the opportunity within adversity.
Excellent. That's a great final message. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you and the Blue Jays the best of luck, because we're all missing sports, and
So am I.
exactly. And we, of course, wish you and your family to stay healthy and happy. And thank you so much for joining us, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. All the best. Be healthy and well.
Thank you. Mark Shapiro of the Toronto Blue Jays. Thanks, Mark.